He is Isaiah Hodgins with the New York Giants. Hey, buddy. Welcome to Sports Spectrum.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Excited to be here.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good. We're catching you after the 2022 season just ended, and I think starting there might be good. And then I really want to get into kind of your journey with the Lord. But it's been pretty much a crazy year. If I'd have told you 12 months ago that this is how it would have all went for you this year, starting with the Bills, not playing much, and then all of a sudden the Giants pick you up. They have some injuries, some needs at the receiver position. You make the most of your time, and you thrive in a lot of ways and have a great finish to the season. What would you have said if I had said, this is how it's going to play out in 2022 to the 2023 year?
It definitely would have been hard to believe. But just seeing how much, again, like you mentioned, just how much God has worked in my life and how far He's brought me just this season. And football alone has just been crazy. I mean, the connections I've been able to make, people I've been able to make, people I've been able to reach with my story, it's been awesome. So, God's definitely brought me far.
Take me through that moment when you're with the Bills, right? And you're starting off the season. You're not sure how much time you're going to get, but that's the team that drafted you, right?
Mm-hmm.
2020, round 6, and you've been there a couple years. What were you thinking after the first few months of the season when you haven't been getting a lot of time? Like, where's your mindset during that moment?
Well, I went into this upcoming season. I was on practice squad the year before because I had an injury in my knee. So, right during preseason, so got cut. So I was on practice squad that whole year. So I made it my goal. I was like, I'm not going to be on practice squad again. I'm going to do everything I can in my power, Lord willingly. I'm going to work in the offseason, I'm going to sacrifice. I was doing that, and it was crazy. There was a lot of hard work put in. And I had one of the best, camps and preseasons I had, since I've been in the league. The preseason was awesome for me. I was, up there for, top 2 in, catches and yards and a bunch of other stuff and making big highlight plays. So I thought, okay, I secured a spot on this team. Bare minimum, if I didn't, I'm going to get claimed if I do get cut.
Yep.
And I ended up getting cut that first time right after preseason, which was kind of like a dagger, and then I didn't get claimed. So I had, all these goals written on my notes, I'm going to get this many yards, this many touchdowns. And, we already were expecting our baby number 2. So I was like, I'm going to be on the active roster. I'm going to buy a house with this money and all this stuff. And, I had all these, plans, and, God kind of, put it on a pause. And I was like, dang, this is hard. I had all these big plans for myself that I thought were so great, and God was kind of telling me to rest and kind of wait and continue to grow on my character and not really worry about as much as my circumstance and building my character. And that's a big thing I learned from the Bills, and I'm glad it happened with the Bills because they have a great organization with a great team chaplain Len over there, and just Bible study, great group of guys, just how close I was be able to build with them. And for the first 4 weeks, I think I was on the practice squad, and then week 5 I got brought up to the Bills active. So then that was I was patient, and now I see really God working in full effect, and I'm like, oh, now more money and I'll be able to buy this house, and man, God's working good. And that was for 6 weeks, but it was kind of I wasn't really playing that much. I had a couple catches in the Steelers game, played a little bit in the Chiefs game, but everywhere else, it was kind of just special teams here and there. Some games I was inactive, and so that I wasn't really getting used. And then come week 10, I think it was 9 or 10, when the trade deadline was about to hit, they had called me in out of nowhere. I had no idea, and told me, we need to make some moves for, a safety and stuff like that. So we're gonna hope that. We're going to cut you and hope that you come back on the practice squad. And then, we'll bring you back on active in a couple weeks. So that's when I was kind of like a dagger again. I was living on this high, and then I kind of got back low. But then, through it all, I was just I was trying not to let my heart get to a resentment for God, or anything. And just okay, trust what God has for me, if it's, just learning how to manage money better. If you just want me to grow in Buffalo more, it is what it is. And then that night, I sat there, and my agent texted me and was like, bro, the Giants. And I was like, what? And then out of nowhere, Dayball, Joe Shane, and everyone just started FaceTiming and calling me hey, we just claimed you off waivers, get on a plane tonight. And I was like, whoa, wow. God's working crazy. And this was literally, it's crazy to talk about it because I could talk about it all day, but literally a week or 2 prior, I had got prophesied over for the first time at a great church that I love in Buffalo. And there was a huge crowd of people. The pastor didn't even know I was a football player, anything, and literally prophesied over 3 people, and I was one of them. Picked me out of the whole crowd and pointed to me and was just was pouring into me, talking all this stuff, and was like, listen, like, you got brought here to be sent. And, like, Buffalo isn't like your only, like, Buffalo isn't your finishing place. God's work on your character and, like, is, like, going to send you to somewhere else. He's like, I see your, and he didn't know who I was at all. And he was like, I see your face on TV and media, on, like, all this, like, stuff, but don't let it get to your head. Like, use God's platform and, reach other people and help people out. And then I was just like, dang, like, this is crazy. So, like, when I got cut at the time, I was like, okay, like, I'm all right, because, like, I know what my future holds. I don't know if that's a year from now, 2 years from now, 10, but, like, God has a plan. And it happened, it was literally like a couple weeks later. And then, like you said, I started to, play a little bit more and more, get a little bit more opportunities, and then, built into, like, a starting role with just, the trust from Dayball and just, like, the hard work and just how good God was, and was able just to sit there and really make an impact, playing playoff games, catch touchdowns, my first touchdown. And, it was definitely just like a surreal year, like a crazy moment.
So much to talk about there. I mean, that's just awesome. First of all, being prophesied at a church. And I've seen that before, and I love that it wasn't like, oh, the famous football player is coming on up type of thing. It wasn't that. It was just him believing that God was telling him to talk about you and talk to you. But the message in that, you are not meant to stay here. You are being called away. And then you're literally called away.
I mean,
it's crazy.
That was just like the whole crazy part about it. He talked about me and my wife, and was just, how you guys are a strong team, and for you guys to continue to pray together, because you guys are, you're going to be in a different place where, you're going to need to be, like, used, and, like, you guys are going to be tested, but, the power being sent by the Holy Spirit will get you through those trials. Like, you're not just, like, going to a new place, like, God's sending you to a new place.
Yeah.
And, like, our preacher Len, or, we call him, it just used to always tell me the same thing of just, like, like, being prepared for, like, those, like, new locker rooms that, like, God's going to bring you to, and, like, I had a lot of good leaders on the Bills, like, spiritually, and he was like, you're going to have to be that leader in a new locker room one day. So, God's molding you here for that. And I feel like that's what he was doing for me in Buffalo. And so, like, a huge part of me wanted to play, like, so bad and be like, I want to ball in Buffalo. I want to contribute in Buffalo. I got drafted here. I love the fans. I love the environment. And God was, like, more concerned just about, like, my character, and was like, you want this, but I have something so much bigger in store for you. Like, your plans are like, oh, you want to catch a touchdown in Buffalo. Like, my plans is I'm going to put you in the biggest market and have you go 100 yards for a playoff game and a touchdown, like, in my first playoff game. Like, that. Like, I wouldn't even, I talked about those goals. Like, I literally wrote down in my notes, like, God, if I could get 200 yards and 2 touchdowns this season, like, just to get my feet wet, like, that would be great. Like, I literally had 400 with 4 touchdowns in 8 games, and then 100 yards with a touchdown in the playoffs. Like, and I was just sitting there looking back on that, and I'm like, man, like, I was thinking so small-minded. Like, God's got so much, like, bigger plans for me in store, and that's just, like, keeps me from motivation for next year, for any trials that I face, like, in the future. Any friends or family that I have facing trials now, I just tell them, like, that same thing of just like, don't when you hit that storm, like, don't sit there and just, I don't know, like, you have to really trust in God that, like, he has bigger plans than, like, the storm that you're going through right now. And, like, that's like, a big thing that I try to tell people all the time.
What's interesting too is that the storm is different for everybody, but there's a preparation involved. If we find out a storm's coming, like a real storm, right, we're going to get prepped for it. If it's snow, if it's rain, whatever, there's, like, this core, this parallel, I should say, into real life. Like, the storms are going to come. James talks about that. The Gospels talk about that all over the Bible. And it's being prepared so when the storms do come, that stinks when you're going through it, but you're able to be sustained through it because you have him. So I want to go there with you a little bit in terms of preparation. Tell me about your walk with Jesus and how that's kind of manifested itself to prepare for a moment like you just described, when it's a stormy moment, but God saw you through, and then the opportunity came. Tell us about your walk with Christ and kind of how it's come together.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of preparation over the years. I grew up in a Christian home, so, I was able to have a good example through that. And,
and your dad played in the NFL,
Dad played in the NFL, so he was actually, like, part of the statistic of, like, one of the players who, like, went broke after playing in the NFL and had to, like, kind of restart his life and was bad with his money, like, relationship really wasn't working with my mom, and then they ended up getting back together and restoring it. But
Wow.
he was able to like mentor me a lot and tell me like, hey, like I made these mistakes, like I don't want you to make these mistakes, like when you get there, do this and do that, and like was kind of like there for me just as a mentor for what it's going to be like. So I was able to prepare myself. But a lot of the stuff was just like, through the trials that I faced in my own, like in college, like getting shoulder surgery and, thinking like, oh, like this is my year, and then getting hurt. And it's like, okay, like learning, like, God's got plans. Like, you have to be patient. Like, this is a time to build character, and he's more concerned about your character than your situation. And, just getting drafted to the Bills and then getting hurt my rookie year, not playing, then practice squad second year, not playing. Like, just like this, God, why do you have me here? Like, I'm waiting. But like through that storm, through those like times, like, just I was able to sit there and do stuff that I feel like God really wanted me to do, like get close to my wife, like raise my firstborn son, who, was there my rookie year, which if I was playing my rookie year and maybe balling, I would have maybe got a chance to, raise him as much and like be there for him and stuff. And, how about my wife and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's definitely like just so many like blessings in it that I look back at. Like, it just like definitely like my walk has just taught me like to not doubt that plan and just, to trust that God's going to bring me through that storm, just some of the sermons that we just heard, like, God's in the middle, like he's right there, like, and like that mess, like it's all right. Like, you're going to get through that and just like trusting God through that. So I think just year by year, my faith has continued to grow with that. And I feel like God's now kind of like pushing me onto a stage of like, being able to share my testimony with people, opportunities like this, opportunities with, younger teammates now. Like, I'm not necessarily a vet, but I'm going on year 4, and, there's going to be some rookies who might go through like the same thing, or like a big place in my heart, which I think God has placed on me, is like talking to some of the practice squad guys. Like for me being on practice squad, like I remember how it felt. I remember how many people overlook them and, oh, it's just a practice squad guy, or they're not making a lot of noise. And I remember being on practice squad and how hard we worked and how like dragging, like even though you don't play on games, like man, like that week is hard and it's brutal, and like kind of used like a test dummy throughout the week, and it's like tough and you don't get a lot of recognition and love. So I try to talk to those guys all the time and give back, and feed into them. And, like God always places, like a special group on, people's hearts and, who they want them to reach and touch. And, there's those certain people for me, but I think he's putting me more on the stage now of like, hey, like I'm giving you this platform. You're in this big market. You worked on your character, you worked on this. Now you have to continue to like build that so you can resist temptation, so you can sit there and be a good leader for these people and set a good example. And now, it's my opportunity to give back, to help, to, kind of show like how far God has brought me.
When you saw the success you were having late in the year, and certainly that wildcard playoff game against Minnesota, I think that was, the biggest stage you could have a breakout game, right? In a playoff game where everybody's watching, 105 yards, a touchdown, 8 receptions. That's when you're starting to realize, okay, Daniel Jones trusts me. The offense trusts me. They're throwing the ball to me, and it's happening. Talk me through having the success that you always probably dreamed of and worked really hard for, but still being able to stay humble, because it's New York. And New York, whether it's Buffalo or New York City, but really in the Big Apple area, it can be hard to stay humble when everybody is saying, you're the man, you're the man. Hey, look what you did. And you're trying to deflect that a little bit and point to God. Talk me through what that's like.
I definitely always try in my interviews just to like make sure that like, I know that most reporters don't like putting it in there and like putting it as a title, but I'm like, I'm going to mention God today and how much he's brought me through it. So, cause I mean, that's my story. Like that Minnesota game, like you can ask other Giants players, like I literally wasn't supposed to play it. Like there was on the Fast Friday, like a typical practice that we had, and the game was on Sunday, our first playoff game.
Yes.
And it's like a routine, basically like jog through practice. Me being my, kind of stupid, energetic self, did a celebration after I scored a touchdown in practice, and then like jumped up in the air, and when I landed, I like twisted my ankle. And like I'm talking like my ankle was black and blue.
Like turned it?
Yeah, like black and blue, like swollen. Like I wasn't barely able to walk the next day. I couldn't even do walkthrough. Like, and then I had to get on a flight to Minnesota. Got more swollen from the flight. Like it was a bunch of stuff messed up, and like I kind of felt like, dang, like I'm gonna let my team down, and like literally just the amount of like prayer that just went into like, God, like if I play this game, it's only gonna be because of you, and like if I make it through this game, it's only because of you. And like I think like he wanted that to happen. I mean, maybe not want to happen, but like he used that as like a, hey, like I'm getting you through this, like like this is me, and I knew that going in. I was literally telling my wife before. She's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna play, but let me tell you, like, if I make it through, it's God, it's not me." Because I mean,
You were hurting.
Yeah, I was hurting. Just
Nobody
jogging.
knew about this, right?
Nobody knew about it. Yeah. So besides like the trainers and coaches and stuff, obviously, and I didn't want to let my team down, so we went out there, and then as I started, catching touchdown, and just the more catches I got in the flow, like I just like started to like really sit there like on the bench and be like, wow, like God is really working right now. Like he's really like bringing me through this. Like and my foot is in serious pain, and like I would not be able to do this without God. Like, solemnly would not. And I remember saying that after interviews and telling people, and they were just like, bro, like, how'd you make it through? Like some of my teammates were literally like, bro, you can't play. Like, and I'm like, nah, I got to. Like, it's my first playoff game. Like, and just sitting there seeing, like, how much, like, God is, like, a reporter asked me after the game, like, a couple months ago you were on the practice squad, and like now you're sitting here catching 100 yards in a playoff game, and I'm just like, that's God. Like that's just like how quick he could work, like his plan coming to fruition, and just like it's nothing else. Like like I obviously I had to work hard and stay with him, but like that's just like God and like how he works and his plans for my life. So it's just been awesome to see it all unfold.
What a cool story. I mean, I didn't know about the injury. Certainly, if anybody's watching that game and they see you balling out, they're certainly not thinking that this dude hurt himself a couple days earlier.
Yeah.
But that's what makes, I think, stories like this so wonderful is you just don't know what's really going on behind the scenes, and that's where God can truly get the glory. So now you got some expectations on you. You get tendered, and you're coming back with the Giants in 2023. How are you handling that? Getting prepared and being ready for that?
Yeah. Like you said, it's like one of those things that you definitely have to sit there and like stay humble through, just knowing that whether you sign a 1 year in New York or you sign like a 5 year, everyone in New York is going to be, oh my gosh, he's coming back, he's amazing, and we love him. And now there's all these expectations, like you said. But my dad's always done a good job of like teaching me like, don't sit there and ride on like the fans like happiness, because like you're gonna die on like when you do bad and like now they all hate you and stuff. So I just try to keep it like a steady stagnant. Like I'm not playing for fans, I'm not playing for fame, I'm not playing for money or anything. I just try to sit there and like play to glorify God and give honor to him every single day. And it's tough. It's not like sometimes when you don't feel like practicing and you're like like I don't want to do this, but you sit there and you remember like why you're doing it. And I remember saying a prayer for one of our wide receiver groups, and one of the wide receivers asked me, he was like, in the prayer I was like, Lord, we praise you, and all this practice and games, like we do all for you and your glory, and that's it. Like, and he was like, you really play for God? And it was like one of those moments that like I felt good because I got to testify to him, and I was like, yeah, like I do. And he's like, why don't you play for yourself, for money, or like family? And I'm like, don't get me wrong, like that's a great byproduct. Like I want to be able to provide for my family. I want to sit there and give back and help the people who help me, and like keep them financially stable. But like if I make money my goal, once I get the money, like then what? Like that hard work stops. Like then that's what happens to a lot of players in the league. But if I make like no matter what money happens, whether I get it or I don't, whether I'm hurt or safe, whether fans love me or hate me, I'm going to just play to honor God. I'm going to go hard every single day for that. Then that will never stop. That will never stop, whether I'm retired, whether I'm in the league or whatever. So, I just try to keep that, my focus for going into next year.
Yeah, and we saw your wife. She's very pregnant. Your new baby, do you know what you're having?
Baby girl.
Baby girl.
Yeah.
So you got your son, you got a baby girl coming. There's a lot of expectations with that too, just being a dad, right? How excited are you to welcome baby number 2 now with your wife?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I actually wanted a girl for my first child.
Okay.
Ended up being a boy. My wife wanted a boy. So then we had my son, and so for the second one I was like, oh, I want a boy, so they could both play together. And she's like, no, I want a girl now.
That's funny.
We ended up a girl, but I'm definitely excited to be a girl dad, but definitely just to be a father of 2, and it's going to take a lot of work. Like you said, expectations for being a husband, being a football player, and then being a dad, and a good example of like a Christian father and stuff. So but that's part of the process, and you got to love that part of just working on yourself to set a good example.
Yeah, and I think all of that ends up kind of taking care of itself. You just have to steward what God has given you properly. And I think the off season is a great way, like, because now you've seen what you've done in previous off seasons, and now this year it's a different off season in terms of expectations, but the work doesn't change, right? Like you still got to prepare yourself and be ready to go, because now they're watching you even closer. Like this guy better have put his work in.
Yeah.
And the off season is so important in that way for you.
Yeah, and like you said, that work has been putting in since I was in college, and then since I got into the league, like the off seasons have changed. It's definitely been work, but when the opportunity comes, now that was my time to show, and now there's going to be more opportunities coming in the future and stuff. So like you said, like that work has to continue to sit there and flow throughout, and that like humbleness and just like readiness about that God has blessed me with has to continue to be there.
So my last question is a question I've been asking more recently to guests, Isaiah Hodgins. When do you feel closest to God? Like at what stage of your journey, or maybe just in where you are now with the Lord and your relationship with Jesus, like when do you feel most close to Him?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, like you could really say like my first 2.5 years in the league was just like a trial, or kind of like a mini storm. So but in that whole storm, like I felt so close to God, and just that whole time, like I knew like one day I'm gonna make it out. Like one day, God's gonna sit here and like bless me and reward me for, it's just staying with Him and like, just believing Him and bringing people to church and, just staying hungry for God. And, as I, started to get more success in the league, then I, want to keep it that way and take it up another step. Like, like I want to be super close to God now that I know that, the evil one's going to be even on more of attack now that I have a platform on my family, my marriage, like my career, my everything. Yes. But, just knowing that, whether it's a trial or, whether it's a good time, that, that's when I have to continue to sit there and stay close to God. And I feel close to God, like, on game days, especially. Like me and my wife have a routine where, I call her while I'm on the field warming up before we go out on pads, and it's just like your own little warm up, and I call her and she prays over me over every game day. And like we've been doing that since college, and that's just like a time like where I sit there and I'm like it just helps me go into the game with like so much less anxiety and just like a calmness of just like no matter what happens, like I got my family, like I got God, and I got Him on my side, and my dad sends me motivational texts, just Bible verses, and just great stuff just to keep me like motivated and close with God. And I think I feel real, especially here at PAO, and just how much I've been learning, like just like real close with God right now, and just like this has been an awesome time to sit here and just like reflect on, again, just like the past couple months of how much He's brought me through, and now going into the future, even this little podcast has helped me sit there and look at like how good of an opportunity I have to sit here and reach more people and bring them to Christ. So
that's it, man. I love hearing that. I have to imagine your dad showing his Super Bowl ring off to you quite often, though, right? Like you're seeing that and you're like, I want one of those too.
Yeah. He always tells me, he's like, hey, listen, no matter how many touchdowns you catch in the playoffs or 100-yard games, until you get a ring, you're not the best player in the family.
That's so great. No, I love that. Bragging rights, of course. Well, hopefully you'll get one of those rings, but even more important, you got the Lord, you got your wife, your beautiful wife, and your soon-to-be 2 babies. Yeah. So good stuff happening with Isaiah Hodgins. Appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
All right. Hey, thanks for watching us here on Sports Spectrum. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel right here. Check out some of our other videos and podcasts, and then go to our website at sportsspectrum.com.